Well, good evening and welcome to this year's third public online talk from the Contemporary Art Society for Wales. I'm Roland Davis, Vice Chair of CASW, and I have the pleasure of introducing this evening's speaker, Elza Tantcheva-Burdge. Hello, Elza.
Hello.
Elza has a background in science, art and design. She has a master's degree in engineering, monumental ceramics and art history. As an engineer, Elza worked in industry and research, then worked in the textile industry, creating collections for such well-known names as Puma, Adidas and Quelle. Later, she began practicing as an independent designer and artist. That led to the development of a new methodology for art historical research using scientific methods, mainly colorimetry, for which she gained a directorate. Elza is currently a trustee and director of the Colour Group GB, an interdisciplinary society that draws together people interested in all aspects of colour, its perception, measurement, reproduction, and artistic expression. Elza's agreed to take questions at the end of this talk for those who are joining us on Zoom. We would like you to put your name and question into the chat box, and when we get to the point for questions, I will explain how this works. So, Elza, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed for such a wonderful presentation. I just wondered, yes, sorry, just trying to get the things and then we will begin. Thank you very much again, Roland, and also to CASW for inviting me to present my journey through the world of color. And the world of color is all around us, but we still, however much we learned about this, we still don't know enough. And yet there are all these interconnections, and also color is a pleasure, color is experience. It could be also giving information like traffic lights or some directional signs. And so I suppose we also take that world of color for granted because it is always there. We always see, and we might not even notice it. So just I would like to introduce you to a world without color so we can appreciate it even more. So how about this? This is a field of tulips in Holland. And of course, if you have seen this particular field at that time, for you, that is just a little note, a reminder of the good time, all the pleasure and the excitement you had. However, the way we're looking at it, it just kind of is nothing really, just the textures you have, but nothing more. But how about this? Just having the color and seeing the color, but because of course some people are born with deficiencies, genetic deficiencies, where they could not see well. Usually red channel is impaired, but there are also people who almost all the time see almost black and white. They're sort of hints of color, but not much to it. So it is so glorious that we can see all this beauty all the time. And so as we're on this journey, let us map it first to know where we're going and why we're going there. And of course, journey taken through the land of color, first we have to, probably I would like to introduce the color and also those aspects, the scientific side of color, which then actually I have used in my work. And the first question I will be asking is what is color, and giving explanations from different sides, which I will do in a moment. And then my first stop will be color in food, because that's was the first thing I researched kind of in the color field. And I went into this engineering and the color in food simply because I always, before then, was involved in art and wanted to do art. But my father, who was involved in research, biochemistry and engineering in food industry, and mainly in color, decided to do things for me. So I went that way. And after a short journey, I went into arts. And although I did a degree in monumental ceramics because I liked sculpture, but I also loved color. And so I was advised to go to monumental ceramics, which I could do in I was born in Bulgaria, so I went to the National Academy of Fine Art. And as I was towards the end of that journey into color in ceramics, I could see that it would have been very difficult to actually practice, because to equip a studio for monumental ceramics, it needed a lot of money to be put in, and I was just starting. And just by chance, I knew somebody who was married to a designer, a Polish gentleman who then went to America, and that place was vacant, and that was in the town from which I come from. And so I went into textiles, and then because of an accident, I could not practice the textiles because I went finally into weaving, and I could not dress a loom. And then I thought long and hard and decided a way to marry these two areas in which I worked, the color science and also art. What best way to do it but in art history, researching the use of color in historic art. And while I was in that, I started working for the color group, and through that I was contacted and actually began with the British Film Institute at that time, having actually an now yearly event, which then became an international conference of color in film. And I shall say more about it when the time comes. And basically now I work predominantly in historic color in art and in historic film. So let us begin. So what is color? So as we have, the official definition for color is an aspect of any object that may be described through the terms hue, saturation, and lightness. And having, the color circle is always very widely used. So the hue has values from 0 to 360 degrees when it starts with red and then finishes at red. And then we have saturation, which is indication of the intensity of purity of color. And so that is in percentage from 0 to 100. And the 0 is always black, and the 100 is the pure basic color. And the lightness or the brightness of the color is again 0 from 100, and that will vary from black to white. And so, why are there colors? It's already describing what is color, but why are there colors? And as it is, I think it started from Newton, and it was him for the first time who actually was able to deduce that actually the interaction of objects with color actually is the way to see them colored, and it is because of the interaction with the visible spectrum of the light, which actually carries the colors, because the visible spectrum is part of this electromagnetic radiation which reaches the earth. I mean, you have the sunlight, you have the radio, the radar, the microwaves, the X-rays, and all these electromagnetic waves, they have different lengths, and the length of such wave is actually the distance between the peaks, or the distance between the troughs, and that visible spectrum is just a sliver of this radiation which reaches, and it is between 400 and roughly saying and 700 nanometers. When you think that nanometer is 1 million of a millimeter, so you can imagine how delicate that part. And why don't we get actually this colored rays coming on us? It's kind of on Earth, but we have this so-called white light, is because mixing all parts of the visible spectrum, and that is called additive kind of mixing of color. When you mix colored lights, the final effect is white light. So we have, that's why we don't have the white light. And here, RGB, this is just the basic colors which are in the additive mixing. And that plays a great role in our perception of color, visual perception of color. And of course, after rain, we have the rainbow, because we have all these droplets in the air which refract the light, and of course, after the droplet's gone, we don't have what to refract the light, and we still have the uncolored light. And so seeing the color is a rather complicated process, and we don't see in our eye, although the light which is reflected or passed through objects actually enters the eye, and then it is transferred to neurosignals, and actually to have that sensation of color. All the signals have to be translated in the visual part of the brain, which is at the back of the brain, that which here is colored in minty color. And the entering of the light and then the translation of that energy into neurosignals, it actually happened at the back of the eye, and in the retina there are different layers of cells, and those which detect the colored light, it is they're called cones, and we have red, green, and blue ones, and they all work together, sending their signals into ganglions, which then translate further and send it to the optic nerve. That is when we have bright enough light. However, when we don't have enough light, so then we have other cells, rods, which then operate, and you have then the more or less black and white. So here is the description. So all this, the eye and then the brain responds to the quality of that light. And we have the sensory data, but the sensory data is still not quite your color perception. And your color perception happens in the consciousness, and that is what we're pleased to call our minds. And they're all the feelings, and the feelings for color. And we have all these little thoughts and notes and remembrance of colors and situation where such color occurred, and we just interlink all these experiences, and then we have proper, so to say, perception of color. We don't just see it, we just feel it. So the mind processes that visual information, which compares with information in the memory, and interprets it as color, and in the process evokes certain emotional response. And that is very important in the creation and the perception of art, of course, like in everything else. And of course, that is very widely used in advertising. And so that is the way we perceive color, but going backwards, tapping into all these different areas helps us to understand better how the color works, not only in art, but also in other areas, like it was the color in food. And color in food is obviously the food itself, and the particular substances which chemical structures which actually introduce that color into this time, as we have here, plant food. And of course, we have the introduction of color into food together with flavors and whatnot, through spices, through herbs, which have their own color. And so the questions which are usually asked, what are the main substances which create this color? And here with the, I mean, you already know the chlorophyll, the greens, and the carrots with carotenoids, which then turn into vitamin A, with anthocyanins in the purplish, and you have lutein in which is very helpful to preserving good vision. And that is interesting to know the quantities, because that also is a qualitative assessment of food. Because, for example, in red paprika, the more we have from the carotenoids, the better that is, the more intense the color is. And if the producer harvested slightly greener ones, it will have slightly muddy, lighter color. And my first involvement with color in food was actually assessing the changes which occur in paprika when you have it fried in sunflower oil. And that is important for the Mediterranean cuisine because it's very much used. So that was my first journey into that little universe. But then also you have a color which relates to the quality, and that was my the last involvement I had. That was actually in Finland, where I worked with groups simply on the quality control of long preservation of carrots. And so the changes in color indicate the preservation of nutrition value. And in between, I worked also in a plant where I was responsible for the production of apple juice, and it was done in traditional method where you have a hydraulic presses and then you have the juice, you add vitamin C to keep it lighter. But with a friend of mine, we have thought of something, why not actually chop the apples to stop the oxidation, which loses nutrition, to chop the apples within alcohol, and then you don't have oxidation, then press the whole thing in traditional way, because the hydraulic presses will be okay for this. And then what is received then goes through something which we devised, a little installation, pilot one, which was a tall tower where you have you have relatively low temperature under vacuum. You have the alcohol evaporating, and then the next fraction which you get is actually the fragrant bits which otherwise are loose in the normal production. And then you add it to the light juice, and then what is left after pressing apples, they produce usually some of it goes for production of pectin. And the interesting bit was, instead of the pectin being this dirty color, it was very light. However, the problem which we had of getting it working is that already there was a huge investment in the traditional way. So here to just very briefly to examine the color, one way is examining through chromatography, and this what you have here is something which I used in the beginning, and it is now not really used because they have they perfected the methodology and they use sublimation and gas chromatographers. But here you, through this method where you have solvent at the bottom and you have all these little dots, they're actually different substances, including the one which you're interested to discover what it is. And for a certain length of time, those substances travel certain length depending on what they are. And in that way, you could identify the substance of what it is. And then you have also what I have used is spectrophotometry, and you have an instrument which has its own source, which is calibrated. You know exactly what the range, the spectral range of that source is. And then the source passes through prism and divides it into the visible spectrum. And then you have, you allow one band, like the green is shown here, which goes through your cuvette. It's a little vessel. And first you calibrate using just the solvent, and then you calculate the absorbance, and that's the way you then, through comparison of graphics, you then identify. So I have done quite enough of food science at one point, and I was also preparing on the side while working for entrance exam into this National Art Academy. And as I said, I then went finally into textiles after doing so. The colors in textiles, of course, in fibers, and then the fibers are spun into yarn, and then material is produced. And the yarn could be used straight, or it could be colored, and so the material as well. You simply use dyes, kind of coloring substances which is soluble in water usually. But also you can print, you can paint on fabric, but this particular image is actually art which was done for Italian firm which produces fancy and very high quality yarns, Felpucci. And usually at that designer bureau, we would designing high-end collections, which will be sometimes even just sold as one-off collection for reproduction. And that was also the way for all this Puma, Adidas, Quelle, we worked, but those big firms, they usually send you swatches. Each big fashion house and also big company, clothing company, but not only clothing company, but mainly the clothing companies, they will have forecast for the season and even for the whole year and even through season. And so we will get these colors, and then we will have the yarns and the material which we needed dyed in firm which was having plant next to us. But with Felpucci, you just had to work with their palettes. That was your palette and the colors, and with the knitted, but also for that reason, also with woven textiles. Actually, you could play in a way with color and also structures. And when you have different shades from the structures created, so that slightly could change color. And after having worked for a while, again, something like 2 to 3 years, I had the chance to take my portfolio and go to Finland, because my father had a posting there and he was working in a laboratory. And I wanted to go and learn computer-aided design. That was a novelty at that time. And that would have put me quite in a good position within the firm. So it was 1.5 years, of course, with a lot of coursework. And during that process, I have approached, now it is Nanzo Group, but it was only Nanzo at that time, a company in Finland which produces, used to produce just knitted wear. So I thought, I know about this, and maybe it will be good to have also some practice. And meanwhile, while I was having all these jolly studies, actually all the perestroika and the thing and the mess around it was happening in Bulgaria. And before I finished my course, from which I would have had, I had actually a diploma, and I would have gone there with all what I needed. Actually, the firm closed. It's a very sad site now. It used to be a big plant. It is just an empty structure. And by then, I also met and married my husband, who is British. And obviously, there was no way back anymore. And my husband started talking about coming to this country. And I went and quickly learned the basics of weaving and specific Nordic techniques, and bought a loom, thinking coming to this country and getting involved, kind of creating my own business, doing fabric design. This is when you weave little swatches of structure, and then you offer this at trade shows or directly to firms. And so here I went to the weaving, and we came to this country, and I didn't have a place to stretch my loom. So what do you do? So I went first and did painted textiles. I was painting scarves. I was painting also big pieces like banners. And here is one of that time. And this was a series of banners, and the theme was butterfly wing. And what I used for this was to start the piece. I used a Japanese technique, which involves a certain way of folding, and then you introduce color, and you can simply finish the piece just with this. But what I did, I just introduced the first colors, and it kind of shows here. That's why I chose the piece. I went and overpainted. And so with this, that gave this more a rich color, and also this feel for which you have a slight kind of dusty appearance of a and soft appearance of butterfly wing. And I did this until I was able to actually set up the loom and be able to start weaving. But meanwhile, while I was doing this painting, I used the time to learn more about techniques and weaving. And I got a B.Tech diploma in weaving and design, woven design from Bradford University. So I did some of the this, what I was saying in the beginning. You create the structures, you try to sell them, but that proved to be a very difficult thing. And I find it, you have to have the certain attitude to deal, to negotiate prices, and yes, you have to have it in everything, but that was particular, especially in the trade shows. It was, I just didn't have, I thought I could be spending that time a bit better. I tried through agencies, but then the cut which they were getting was too much. So I decided to try actually start and do weaving and treat the weaving as painting with thread. And for the first time, I was having the freedom to experiment as just by chance. I stumbled across a gentleman who at that time was, shall we say, he was a hermit, but was running this hermitage, and he was an icon painter himself. I just met him at an icon exhibition, and he was fascinated that I can weave, and he was doing this chapel, and he was expecting then the Prince of Wales to come, and then they will have some more funds, blah, blah, blah. And he said, could you do something for me? And so I agreed to do for him a set of 3 curtains, and that is for the Hermitage of Saints Anthony and Cuthbert in Shropshire. And also he wanted a cover for stands on which you put your daily icon. And in Orthodoxy, every day is a day of some saint which you celebrate, and they have the icon and people go and venerate it. So I made a set of textiles which comprised one purple plain hand-woven piece. He was very deliberate. He wanted everything to be hand-woven. And I created also a piece, which is one off panel, which was over 3 meters length. This is what you see. That site was to be during the feasts, but during Lent, you had some plainer. I didn't photograph the rest of it, but it's much plainer. And here, for the first time, I stumbled across the color symbolism. And the color symbolism in the Orthodox Church is very rich and very much used. It's tradition to paint certain saints in certain colors, and that had been kept for centuries. And always you have Christ. His color is red. It's red also in the Catholic Church. And here for this panel, I had this, as God was in the beginning and Christ is part of the triune God. So this journey and the journey to holiness, which you have the saints achieving that, you just then have the triune, the 3 parts of one. And here, just before actually the icon will appear, this structure was to be the narrow gate through which the saints enter. I mean, all this was after long conversations and explanations. But as you can see here, I tried all the time to have the thing more painted, like trying to present an idea through colors. And the thing which we have here is also the composite cloth, which is with red and with blue. And from this came the votive flames in the basilica. It was series. And we have here things which try to represent the structures which are very intricate of Byzantine architecture, the shimmering light in intensely colored interior. And so this miniature here, part of which you can see devoted flames, that was to represent that shimmering flame. That, by the way, is one of the pieces which got into something which is was then quite good journal modern painters, like painting with thread it was. And a big piece which I did, which represent mainly this kind of niches and stuff which you have in Byzantine culture. And then I became very interested in the translucent structures. And from that came a series of small pieces, but also one big free floating panel, which is predominant translucent structure. This is the structures used, and this is the whole panel. And that is just to attempt representing the intermingling of water and light. I'm just going, and then from this, I went even finer. It was very interesting to see the light responsive weaving, how it will be possible to do something. And I started creating structures very ethereal and very responsive to minimal changes in surrounding light. And this is one panel representing that. And to achieve it, I was using gossamer threads, a very fine fishing line, and silk threads, which are very graceful, and gold thread, which is used in embroidery. And here you can see the same panel under different, from different angle and light, and how gossamer it is. It could be seen in this picture. And then after that accident, I went to historic art, and I worked in University of Sussex, which is in Brighton. And there I was beginning to be interested in materiality, in the symbolic meaning, and a color system which could explain the aesthetics and the impact of the ambient light. And I researched into my doctoral research, which I began there, was into 5 churches, 17th century ones, which had very little light. That's how they look like a brown, but they're just a feast of color inside. And yet there is very little light. So the ambient light was very important, and that all was actually the light of candles. And so they had this very high light contrast pictures with predominantly red, because and a lot of gold, which already had worn off. And I have researched that the materiality. I used the spectrophotometer, and on the basis of the sensitivity, was interpreting the way the pictures were put, and ambient light which they would have had. And that led to a research. I got invited into research from Chinese scholars, which is into Danhuang Mogao caves. And this particular one, which you can see, we researched the periods which were certain height, and this one is from the Tang period, and the high the period of Tang period. And the interesting bit is that with the first research, I used the muscle color system, but the second one, which happened during the pandemic, we had to use pictures, and so we used the Pantone matching system, and they have some catalogs which are all electronic, where that was able and we were able to do that. And so we actually found in both cases the actual palette which was used. And so then the aesthetic had to be interpreted. And of course, that is what kind of material you use, the colors which were used will create the aesthetics, but that might be given. But then the culture and the tradition will create the meanings, and also particular color orders could give us better explanation for that. And in every Judeo-Christian, it is always used the visual relations of color, while in the Chinese, we had to use for interpretation why they particularly use those colors and how they use them. We use their works in actually philosophical system to interpret the art. And as I said, all this gradually took me to color in film. And this is a few scenes from a film which is from 1996, but it needs still to have a record of the colors as they are, in case that needs to be restored in a later date. And now the restoration is a digital one, because the films get scanned in a special scanner and then they're digitally processed. And those scanners work on, having in mind and embedded the principle of the color spaces, they started in 1931. And those particular scanners, this is what you see here, the chromatistic diagram. These are actually all the colors which are possible to be registered by a human eye, but each machine reproducing or monitor, they have a certain part of that. And so in this Profoto RGB, that's where is all this wide area in which these scanners work, and they can register most of the colors which possible. And that also allows for all the films to be digitally restored, therefore scanned, and through different means, I won't go into this, the colors could be put back. So on this note, I must say that I still don't think I know too much about color, and there is still a lot to learn, and the journey is very long still. But I thank you, all the participants, for coming to accompany me on this first part of the journey. Thank you. And as already Roland said, yes, I'm very happy to answer any question you have. I hope I would be able to answer.
Right. Thank you, Elza. Can I ask you to turn off the share screen that you've got?
Yes, sure. I can.
Thank you very much. So yes, we've got a little bit of time for questions. Now, what I propose you do at this point is use speaker view. You will find that you're you will find you're able to unmute yourselves, those who want to ask the questions. What I would ask is that once you have asked your question, would you go back to mute so that we don't get any feedback and the next person can ask a question. And we've got a couple of questions already in the chat box. There's a long question from Roger. So Roger's still here. Roger, would you like to put your question to Elza?
Yes, I can only really read what I've written.
Fine.
Excuse me. It seems to me that we cannot know that the sensation any particular person experiences when observing a colour is the same sensation that other people experience.
Correct, yes.
We might both be calling it red or blue or whatever,
yeah.
And we both experience the reception of the same electromagnetic frequency. But does this impact on our brains in the same way? Might that be why people sometimes disagree on whether colours go well together and why different people have different favourite colours?
Well, very good question, and kind of it is a very meaty one. I will try to answer as quickly as possible, as many points, because there are very many points. Yes, we see each one sees colors differently. First, it could be simply the way the apparatus could process. I mean, as I said, there could be some congenital problems, and generally also untrained eye could perceive fewer nuances than a trained one. And with the trained one, actually, the thing is, you can have up to 2 million normally, but then a trained eye could perceive up to 10 million. And the problem is also you have all these layers which your consciousness had introduced. With this, you have your memories, your kind of community peculiarities, and if you're from different cultures, they see the things in different, the colors are approached in different way for different purposes. So everything is so complicated, and I don't know, does it even start answering your question? My answer, I mean.
Thank you anyway.
Thank you. I will just disappear in a minute to turn on my the feeding to my computer, but I can listen anyway.
Right. Okay. Now there's another question in there, and that's from Sean. So do you want to put your question, Sean?
It's fine. Thank you, Elza. I mean, that was really fascinating. My question is far less erudite, I'm afraid. But my question is, what does a fashion designer consider when choosing the color of a garment that he is designing?
Well, the fashion designer will consider the all these forecasts, what the big fashion companies, if that designer is not working for such a big outfit. And the thing is, you don't have any more kind of like people designing directly for people, but if you have that thing, then you consider the color of the person, and you have different small outfits now which offer color analysis, and they will try on you different colors, and they classify your natural colors into 4 seasons, and then your total color and so on. But going back to the fashion designer, they will follow the trends for the year or the season.
Fine. Thank you very much, Elza. Thank you.
Not at all.
Right. We have another question from the president of CASW, Mr. Peter Waitlin.
Hello.
Hello. Thanks very much for letting me in. It's possibly a simple question for you, Elza, but one that quite often troubles me, which is to do with what is truth in colour. I'm quite often in the situation of producing exhibition catalogues or books that where you can actually be at an exhibition and carry a catalogue round in the same light as the exhibition and hold it up. And you know, these days with digital printing and digital photography, the results are less awful than they once were. I've often been at exhibitions, held something up and thought, I'm not even going to buy this catalogue because it's so wrong. It's so different from the pictures that I've been experiencing. And yet one knows that, you know, you might be reading in a bright light, looking at a picture, but seeing a picture on a wall in all sorts of different lights.
Yes.
And a picture in particular, and historic art, would never have been seen in the bright spotlights that we can put on them now.
That's very true, yeah.
So what is truth? Simple question.
Wow, that's an enormous question. And I think, like in everything else, we live in the shadow of the relativity. Kind of everything is relatively true, and you cannot quite say what's the truth. You could, in a way, when you use spectrophotometry, you can record a color using 3 numbers. As I said, the hue, and all this. But then when you have to translate this into printing, and of course the ambient light again, and it will be also the direction of the light, kind of the angle at which it falls, then that will change colors, especially in catalogs which are usually glossy. And the reproducing devices, as you have the digital photograph, they will, so far, they cannot reproduce the whole range of colors which we can see. The high end will have the biggest range of colors. But then you have the picture from your digital photography, then you have to send it to print. And that print will have its own limitations, because even the most wonderful printer prints very small part of that visible colors. And also because in printing, you have subtractive editing of colors, where adding colors brings you to black. And so the printed colors will always be more muddy than those which, for example, you see on your screen, because on your screen you have the colors as light still coming to you. And even then, the monitors, again, they operate in part of that visible spectrum. So there are a lot of limitations, and although we are very technically advanced, there is still a long way to go. So I don't think in very near future we will see catalogs which you open and you see the picture and you say, ah, oh, That's wonderful. They're the same. So I hope I began to answer your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Well, the next question I have, I'm going to have to read out because it's come through to me on an email.
Okay.
And the person can't actually access on Zoom at the moment. So the question from Jane and Alan Salisbury.
Yes.
Do you, Elsa, have a favorite color for different seasons and times of year, light difference? And if so, why?
Well, I don't have favorite color, I must admit. I just like a color in context. I mean, not just the season, but how, I mean, if I'm wearing something, how it relates, not just to me, but to the other colors or whatever. And the seasons, yes, probably the light there is more interesting. So then I would like different colors and different colors for different things. So the short answer is I don't have a favorite color because I love them all.
I think that's an excellent answer. What you, I should probably explain, Elsa, that came through to me by email,
Yeah.
and it came through from France, which is where the Salisburys are watching this. We're getting close-ish on time, but I'm going to take the opportunity of asking a similar type of question.
Yes.
But from a completely different angle. You've had a significantly varied career, albeit in color. So of all the different things that you've done, which, if you like, which of your career options is your favorite?
Again, I love them in different way. I didn't like the food. The Italian food I didn't like much. I mean, I was just trying to amuse myself there with research. I really enjoy my time in design, in textiles, even though we were very restricted, but I'm a person who actually loves working against restrictions, and that's why I went to weaving. And I loved very much my time in weaving as well. And now I'm very much enjoying actually learning more and more about color and trying to understand it, and especially this with being introduced to and having to work in different culture. That actually was fascinating, the way how something so visual like color could be actually conceptualize and turn more into idea rather than being simply visual thing. So I love them both, except except my time in the food industry.
Lovely. Right. I've got another question that's come through by email, and we'll make this the last question. And
take your time.
Comes from Francis Woodley.
Yeah.
Who says, why does the same color look different in different types of fibers, including natural and synthetic fibers?
Yes, fair enough, it does. Even if you keep the same light, it will look the same. The thing is, when you have the fiber, the initial fiber, the natural and the synthetic, depends what kind of synthetic, and again, depends what kind of natural. So you spin that into yarn and then you do your fabric. But the way you spin fiber, which is artificial, is one, and also in the yarn, because the artificial fiber is usually long, much longer than you will have the natural ones. They will lie smooth, and then the reflective quality of a fabric will be much greater, and it will look different. And then the other one will be, shall we say, more hairy, even though mercerized cotton could then be with that sheen-like appearance. These days, they turn to chop these long fibers and spin them. And then the yarn which you produce actually might have softer appearance, and the fabric produced from it is much softer. So you have modal, which is again this chopped long fibers and then spun, which is soft as cotton, for example, and it will have this kind of muted appearance. So yes, depending on the fiber you start, then that determines the quality of the fabric, and that shine, the way it interacts with light, will give the different appearance and feel.
Right, thank you, Elza, for that answer, and thank you to everybody for the questions. What a fascinating talk. Scientist, designer, artist, wow. Okay, so
Jack of all trades.
well, there's another part to that, so don't forget. In a moment, I'm going to invite you all to say thank you to Elza, but before I do, bit of publicity for us. If anyone has been participating, would like to know more about CASW, and in particular how to become a member, please visit our website at casw.org.uk for all the relevant information. Also, let me tell you, this is the last of our online talks for 2023. But in the autumn, we return to meeting in person for our public talks. So please look out for details, which will be published in due course. So can I ask everybody now to switch to gallery view, unmute, and say thank you to Elza in the traditional manner. Thank you, Elza.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Thank you
very much. It's very interesting.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. It was very nice to meet you even in this way. And I hope that one day I would be able to meet you all in real life.
Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.